Hello everyone, my name is AlignSelf and in this video I am going to explain CSS Flex Display fully because CSS Flex Display, or some people call it Flexbox even, is very important, and understanding this Flex Display could help you in so many different circumstances that you don't even think, because sometimes I've seen people doing things very hard because they are not familiar with Flex Display, and the thing that they are doing with so many different steps, and you can just do that with a single Flexbox CSS property. So that's why we are going to explain CSS Flex Display in full depth in this video, and we start by an example. For start, I have a div with a class of container, and we can see that I have 6 different items inside this div, and all of these items have some text inside them. And sure enough, for you guys to be able to see the result better, so this is our result, I have just applied some background color and border and some padding and margin, color, font weight, some CSS, some simple CSS properties I have applied to this container and to these items so that you can see them better. You can see each one of these items and the area of the container. And something that I usually do, in my star selector, I select everything and set the margin and padding to 0 for everything, because usually browsers have some margin or paddings for some different elements. I want to set that on 0 because I want to control the margin padding myself without browser changing these margin and paddings for itself. So okay, this is it. This is the code that we are trying to start with, and we are going to understand about CSS Flex Display. So let's start. For start, I'm going to assign a display of flex to this container that we have. And the point is, when we assign a flex display to something, for example, in this case, we have assigned to a container, the behavior of the element itself doesn't change. For example, we have no change in the behavior of this container, but the behavior of the items inside it will change. For example, this item, those items were directly inside it. For example, if it was in a p tag, so this is it has no change on this p tag. It just changes the behavior of the elements that are directly inside this container. So which means each every single one of these items will change their behavior. And what is that change? If we come back here and hit refresh, we can see that now all of these things that we have a flex display, and no longer they are in separate lines, rather they are wrapped inside a row. And this is the first effect of flex display that we can see, that have in mind the behavior of the items inside that will change. So that's something to have in mind. And also, when we apply a flex display to something, there are some other commands that will be unlocked. For example, the first thing that we are going to learn is actually the flex direction. See, when we applied a flex display, the default value for flex direction is on row, which means it tries to have all the items inside one row. So that's why this is the result that we have. If we can change that. We can change the flex direction. So this is the second CSS property that we are going to learn after display flex. And you can see there are some values: row reverse, and column reverse. Well, the row is the default one, which we saw, and row reverse actually is just the reverse of the row. You can see the 6th element is here now, number 6. And also we have column for that, so you can guess what the column does. It's just like a column, and you can see this is what happens. And column reverse, so you might guess what that is. So have that in mind, and this is something that we can control. Actually, I am going to set the flex direction to row to default value because this is what I'm going to continue with. And another thing that we need to know is that, look, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items. If we want to have an equal width for each one of these, we can actually go ahead and apply a width of 20% to them. And if we come here to these items that we have, if we apply a width of 20% and hit save, come back here, hit refresh, and this is the result that we have. But there's something very important that you need to have in mind. See, I have a question. What if I add another item, or even, for example, change that width to 40%? What happens? Well, at first you might think, okay, so if it is going to occupy 40% of the width, so that's why the third and fourth div, they might go to the next line, and the fifth div go to the next line. This is something that we might expect. So but if we refresh, we see no change. So this is actually quite strange, because you might think, okay, we applied a width of 40%, but nothing happened actually. In fact, when we applied a width of 20%, it worked. And actually, if we apply a width of 10%, it actually again works, a width of 10%. But when we make that to something that will end up bigger than 100%, for example, for this one, a 40% width, what happens is that the flex display will no longer listen to us, because it has not enough space for 40%, because the flex direction is on, we have something called flex wrap. The flex wrap, for default value for flex wrap, is on no wrap, and it tries to put everything inside a one row and nothing goes bigger than that. So that's why, so we can actually come here. So this is the second, another thing that we are going to learn, and that's called actually flex wrap. The default value is on no wrap. Okay, we have no wrap, wrap, and wrap reverse. If we set that on wrap, flex wrap, wrap, what happens is that now we have that output that we expected. Now one here, so there's not enough 40% width for the third one. So it goes to the next line. So this is what we expected, and this is what is happening. So we have a flex wrap, and the flex wrap is on no wrap, wrap, and also wrap reverse. We can see that. Let's just try that out, and we can hit Control and refresh the page. As you can see, it's just wrap reverse, and it's kind of stupid, this wrap reverse, because if we wanted to reverse it, we should have used flex direction on row reverse, something like that. So I think it's kind of, you can say, stupid if you have a wrap reverse for that. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that we have something like that. So I'm going to continue with flex wrap because this is what I like, and this is what I'm going to continue with. So now that we put the flex wrap on wrap, okay, now let's get back and put the width on 20%. Let's see what happens. If we refresh, now it's just another thing. There's another strange thing happening. Okay, what is that? 20% for you, 20% for you, 20% for you, 20% for you. But why you are not here? Because 20% is enough space for you. So why it's on to the next line? So the reason is, it has something to do with the width of the element, how browser calculates the width of elements. See, when I hit inspect on this element, we can see that this div has a margin around it, and a padding, and some content inside this. Let's remove the margin temporarily. I am going to maybe bring that back. If we come back here and hit refresh, you can see the margin is gone. But since we have a little padding inside our items, so you can see you have a little padding inside that. As you can see, it has a how much did we use? A 10 pixel padding. Yes, right, it is. A 10 pixel padding, each one of these they have. So what happens is, okay, the width of the element is 25%, yes, but because of the border and the padding, both are considered. Because of the both padding and the border, the width of the element will be increased a little bit, and it becomes a little bigger than that 20% that we applied. So if it becomes a little bigger than 20%, so that's why there's not enough space for the I have written item 6, but this is actually our item 5. So let's change that. So this is our first item, second item, and another item. This is item 3. So in order to have that, so this is our fourth. So that's that's something that I had mistaken. So this is something that we need to fix. Okay, it's beside the point. So now we understand why it's happening. So if we go ahead and let's temporarily again remove the padding that we have, and also the border should be removed as well. And the border temporarily, let's remove that. Now you can see, okay, it's now working, it's okay, and the width is like that. But there's something that I need to mention. In CSS, we have a CSS property called border box. And what is border box? See, when we say that the width of the element is 20%, well, the browser sets the width of the element itself, so we can come back here, the width of the element 20%, and extra padding and extra border causes it to become bigger. But if we set the box sizing to border box, because box sizing is a CSS property that has two values. One is contents box, which is the default value, and the second one is the border box. Well, the default value is on contents box, so that's why when we assign padding and border, it causes the element to grow bigger. But if we come here and set the box sizing, we can set the box sizing of each item that he has. We can set the box sizing to border box. Well, this CSS property is not related to Flexbox, but knowing this CSS property would help you in order to understand so many things as well as Flexbox. So when we set the box sizing on border box, it means, hey browser, when we say width 20%, we mean the width of the element and the padding and the border itself. So that's the box, that's my box, that's what I mean by my box. So now in this case, it is going to work. And if we come back here, hit refresh, you see it's now just fine because the width of 20% is actually what it is. And sure enough, if we now use a margin and come back here, hit refresh, still we lose that because the content, the margin, again, it creates extra space. When it creates extra space, there's not enough room for the last one to be like that. So this is something that you need to have in mind. Okay, and since this margin is causing some problems, so if we even remove that, the problem will be solved, yes. But what if we want some space between these elements? In that case, so that's why I usually recommend that do not apply the any changes to the item itself, things like that. That's why I always recommend when you are using Flex Display, just create another div or another tag or another element right inside your flex item, because when we apply a display flex to this, anything that is directly inside this is called a flex item. And let's hold the alt key and highlight all of them. So I'm going to create another div here, and I am going to call it assign a class of content to this. So that's why I usually recommend that let's use this another selector here to write your Flexbox just like the way that I do. So I am going to assign this background color and to this, and also this box sizing border box is something that usually we can actually put inside our star selector, and actually this box sizing border box is usually that developers put in their star selector and they say, hey browser, that's what we mean by border box for everything, and that's the way that you should do it. So that's why we can actually, in order to have some space between those elements, so that's why we create an item here, and this color bold and this things like that, and we control the width of the item with there, but we assign these properties to a content class. And now since this item has a padding, sure enough, if you come here, hit refresh, we see that extra space between them. And why it's not happening, we have a we maybe how did we forgot to give a class of content to this one. So this is now our result, and also we can actually give a little padding to the content itself. We can apply a padding, for example, of 10 pixel to the content itself, but the result, the output, is not exactly as it was. See, if we come here, hit inspect on this element, we can see that the div with a class of item has occupied the 100% height of the element. You can see all of these items that we have. You can see all of them have a height of 100% as much as they can. But since now we have moved our content, created a new div with a class of content. This class of content has a height of auto, and the result is not exactly as the what we had before. So to solve this, we can actually come here and give a height of 100% to each one of these contents. So now this is it. So I think this way that I have done it, like a container with a Flexbox, and all of these are a flex item, and now a class of content or anything for them. This is, I think, better because you have more control over your items. And the good thing about it is that when you say width 20%, the width is 20%, and you no longer need to be about things breaking to other lines, and the controlling items is now, I believe, much easier compared to what we had before. So now that we have prepared everything and we have learned almost the basic stuff, the fundamental concepts of Flex Display, so let's continue and learn some more things. The next thing that I'm going to teach you is the flex flow. See, flex flow is kind of a shortcut command, nothing new. See, we had a flex direction and we had a flex wrap. We can actually combine these two and write these two with one single CSS property, and that's called flex flow. In flex flow, we write two values. The first value, we write flex direction. For example, we can say a row, and the second one is the flex wrap. We can say row wrap. And see, this line does exactly these. So let's comment these two. These two lines that we wrote, this line just does the exact. So this flex flow is nothing new. It's just a shortcut for what we had. If you hit refresh, sure enough, there is no change and nothing changes. So this is something that I wanted to mention as well, because I want to cover everything about CSS Flexbox in this session. So now that we have everything here, the items are here, I think it's time to talk about justify content and align items is something that we are going to discuss now. See, imagine that we have some more divs here, or rather than some more divs, let's change the width of 20%. For example, let's say we have a 40% width for each one of these, and come back here, hit refresh. Sure enough, this is what happens for 40% width. When we use this 40%, we have some extra space in our Flexbox. And if we hit inspect and come here, we can see that extra space, that extra generated space is being shown with a purple area here. You can see that purple area is actually the extra space of our Flexbox. We can actually control the distribution of that extra space, how that extra space is being distributed. Well, the first thing that we are going to use is justify content. Is this something that we can learn? Justify content is for controlling the horizontal alignment of these items. For example, the default value for justify content is on start. So that's why you can see the first item is at left, here. We can set that, for example, on center. And sure enough, we can come back here, and this is justify content center, and you can see everything is at center. And we have justify content end for this, or even there are some circumstances when we use flex end. And this flex end and end are just same as each other. There's no difference between them. It's just that I wanted to mention, if you saw somewhere, know that this is actually something too, but I rather use the words start and end. And also we have some other values, for example, space around. This space around puts that extra space around the elements. So that's why when we come here, you can see that purple area, it's around the elements. We had between also a space between, and so this is space between, it puts the space between them, and sure enough we have a space evenly as well for distributing that extra space evenly in X direction. So that's about justify content. But there's something else that I need to mention. Why we use the word start and end, not words like left and right. See, because this start and end depends on the direction of the document. For example, we can control the direction both via a dir attribute. You can see some people append a dir attribute to body or HTML tag. For example, dir attribute, it means direction. That's short for direction. And we have two values for that. LTR, which means left to right, and RTL, which means right to left. It's good for some languages like Farsi and Arabic, where the direction of the language is from the right to left. So if we set the direction to RTL, and imagine, let's say we set the justify content on start. So wait, it's not typing. Okay, now it's typing start. So now the start is not on left, actually a start is right because the direction is an RTL. And sure enough, the word end for this is left. So that's why we are using the words start and end rather than using left and right. And also this direction, we can control that via an attribute, or we can control it via a CSS property, for example, like direction. So the attribute is there, but the CSS property is actually direction. We can set that, for example, on, let's set that on the default value LTR. So you can see this is LTR. And if we set that on RTL, this is RTL. So this is something to have in mind as well. So I comment this, I do not remove this. So that's why you know why you are using the words end and start rather than start and left and right. And also, there's something else. We had something called flex direction. Do you remember? Sorry. Yes, flex direction, which the flex direction was actually on, we have set that on row. If we set the flex direction, so we have set the flex direction inside our flex flow. So the flex direction is actually row here. We can set that on column as well. So that's why, again, not using the words left and right, we are actually using the words just column and things like that. So this is something to have in mind as well, and we have everything's good to go now. The justify content, let's put that on center and continue with something called align items. See, what is actually align items? If we come here, let's apply a height to this container that we have. For example, let's imagine that I'm going to apply a height of 50 VH to this. 50 VH means 15% of the viewport height. And if you come back here, hit refresh, sure enough, this is the height of the element that we have, and everything is good. So the align items, to justify content was for controlling the horizontal alignment, and align item is for vertical alignment. So the default value for align item is on stretch. As you can see, everything is stretched, and everything has gone like a height of 100% they have, it seems. And we can actually come here for items that we have, or sorry, this is something we can apply to this. We can set an align items, and there are some values for that. So, well, we set the default value is on stretch, and you can see the default value is this stretch here. And we can use some values, for example, like center or start. So this is how center looks like. The align item is on center, and also the word end, start, and things like that. And also there's another value for align items. So we covered every possible value for align items, but there's only one thing that is remaining. And that one is baseline. In order to understand the baseline, we need to make some change to our code. Because if I apply this base, just because right now with this thing that we have, the align item of baseline is not that understandable. Okay, we hit refresh, there's nothing changes. In order to understand the difference between align item start and baseline, let's imagine that one of these items have a extra padding from top. For example, we can just come here. So we have selected every item here. We can actually come here, select. So one of the items we are going to, for example, we can say nth child 4. So this nth child 4, what it does, it doesn't select all the items. It only selects the fourth child of the item. So this selects the fourth one. So for the fourth one, let's apply a padding top of 50 pixels. So what happens is all of them have a padding of 10 pixels, all of them have a padding top of 10 pixels, but the fourth one has a 50 pixel padding top. So if you come back here, hit refresh, we can see for the base, so this one has a 40 sorry, you can hear this has a 40 pixel padding from top, but this one doesn't. Okay, so we saw. So now if we come here and set the we should have applied the padding to the content, not to the item. So come here. So I want to apply that to the content. Dot content. Okay, and come back here, hit refresh. So let's first put the align items on start so that we can understand. So the align item, let's first put that on start, and you can see this is how start looks. But for the baseline, it's just like the start, but it's not considering the element, it's considering the content inside this. So the element is this, but the content is starting from this section. So that's why when we set that on baseline, so what happens is this comes a little downward, so this is the baseline. So it considers like the baseline like that. So it puts the text of both of them inside one thing. So that is the difference that for the baseline and things like that. So let's come back and let's comment this a little, comment this out so that we can remove that and set the align item to start thing that we had. And if you really take a look at it, there's something not wrong, but something missing from this align items. See, when we set the align item to both the start, to end, and things like that, we never saw something that all of them go stack on top. For example, when we even set the align items to end, what happens is it's not like all of them go to the very end, like come very down, all of them. This is not something that we can do with align items. So that's why there's another thing called AlignContent. So let's bring the code and comment this align item for a moment. And let's use AlignContent rather than align items. And let's put that on end. So that's align item end, and we hit refresh. This is align content end. So this is something that you need to have in mind. So for the align content, we have some values: start, end, center, stretch, space between, and space around. So with these words, you might guess each one of these align items, what they do. We can go ahead and try every one of them, for example, start and things like that. But you get the point once you understand them. For example, a space between, we had that space between, this is space between. So this is something that we can actually control, space around and things like that. So we have some values for align content, and you can actually go ahead and check them out yourself. So this is something that we know. This is align content. And the last thing, another thing about aligns that I wanted to say, there's something else called AlignSelf. So this AlignSelf, so we saw everything that we did, like justify content, align items, align content. We applied these CSS properties to the container, to the thing that we had a flex display. But we can actually go ahead and apply some CSS properties to, for example, one of the items. For example, this one we should apply to the item, not to the contents. So for example, we can say, go ahead and select the fourth item, or not, let's not use fourth item every time. This time let's use the third item, and we can apply an AlignSelf to this. This AlignSelf is just like the align items. It behaves like that, but it's something for the items, not for these. For example, we can set that on end, okay, and align items when we haven't specified any align items. And let's comment this align content as well. So for the default value for align item is on stretch, so that's why if we hit refresh, all of them are stretched except the third item, which we have set the AlignSelf of the third item directly to the end. And of course the values are for AlignSelf is like end, start, and baseline, and things that we had. So, and we do not have a AlignContent self because it's unnecessary. If we wanted to, that we can control that from the container. So AlignSelf for the each item, it actually can be useful, but AlignSelf for the content, like AlignContent self, is something meaningless. I think it's just unnecessary, so that's why we do not have that. So, but the question is, if we have something called AlignSelf for the vertical alignment, so we had justifyContent for horizontal and align item for the vertical. If we have an align item, do we have a for an AlignSelf? Do we have a justifySelf as well? No, because again, we can control that justifyContent with margin as well. We do not have that. For example, see here, if you come back here, hit refresh, we can see that this thing that we have, we can control it with margin out2. See, this item, and this is our container, it has some extra space. We can, for example, we have selected the third item, right? We can actually go ahead and apply a margin, for example, margin right out2. This means we apply this margin right out2 to the items. This means go ahead and try to have margin as much as you can from your right. So what happens is, if we come back here, hit refresh, it pushes even everything over, and it has a margin from its right as much as it can. And of course, if we go ahead and select the fourth item here and set the margin, let's set the margin left out2. So for this one, this is fourth item. We wanted to set the fourth item. What happens is, this is it has from left, sorry, the margin right out2 for this one as well. Right out2 for this one as well. This is what happens. And sure enough, if we set a margin left out2 of this one and a margin right of this one, so this is they go append. So the point is, we can control that with margin left out2 or margin right out2 for the alignment of the horizontal. So this is something to have in mind as well. And also, if the flex direction was on column rather than row, the margin top out2 and margin bottom out2 is also something meaningful that you can use. So this is a fact, this is a note, and this is something to have in mind as well. This is good. So the last thing that I'm going to cover in this video is the order. See, the order is also something that we assign to the flex items rather than the flex container itself. For example, this is our third child, right? And this is our fourth child. Well, we can actually give an order to each one of them, and the order is a number. For example, I set order of the fourth child to 1, and the order of this one, set the order of the third child to 2. Okay, and what happens is, if you come here, hit refresh, well, those that did not have any order, like the first item and things they have no change and they come at first. But those that we did apply any order to them, they go to the last, but with the order that we wanted. See, now the fourth item must come sooner than the third item. And as you can see, the third item is here, and this is our fourth item. And so this is 1, 2, and the fifth item are there, because 1, 2, and 5th, they do not have any order, so that's why they come first, and this is something that we can the orders are there. So, and in fact this order is very good because especially when you are designing something for responsive design. For example, you want to say, hey, for the desktop app that we have, the order, this one is first. You can use media queries, but for the mobile devices, the order of this one is first. You can change the orders based on the device width. And because this is something that has happened, for example, I've been sometimes been told that for this particular example, for the mobile devices, I want this one to come first, but for the desktop, this one left, right? So this is something that you can combine this order with media queries and have a perfect result. And also, there are only some couple of facts that are remaining that I didn't cover in this video, and I'm not going to cover in this video because I don't think that they are as useful as the stuff that I just told you. See, I've been using CSS for almost it's been like 10 years actually, now that I think about it. And in this 10 years, I have never been used this flex grow or flex shrink or flex basis. And I'm not saying that they are useless. No, everything in CSS is actually useful, but I believe that they are not as frequently as used as things like justifyContent or align items and things like that. So that's why I'm not going to cover these three things. There are three things remaining: this flex grow, flex shrink, and flex basis, and they are very advanced stuff and they're not as useful. So, but if you're really interested in these things and you want to learn them and you want to know everything about CSS, you can check out this article. You can just search CSS tricks understanding flex grow, flex shrink, and flex basis. This article is very great. It can help you if you like to know everything about Flexbox. So this is it. We covered everything about CSS Flexbox except these three things, which also I at least introduced a article and a documentation for you if you are really thirsty to know them. But I believe they are not as frequently as used. So the chances of opening a random project and seeing these things being used is really low. But if you open a random project, and the chance of seeing a justifyContent is pretty much high. So that's why I mean by important but less important. So this is it. That's enough for this video. Hope that I helped you.